Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
The Print Off the Cuff, presented by IIFL Wealth and Asset Management, powered by Raheja Corp, corporate partner AU Small Finance Bank, in association with global insurance brokers, airline partner SpiceJet, healthcare partner Pharmed, in association with Jindal Steel and Power.
So I'm delighted to welcome all of you to what promises to be an incredible tutorial on what's going on in the world, specifically on this coronavirus situation. Because over these past many months, we've seen one name from our region emerge globally as among the most trusted and most comforting voices. And that is Dr. Faheem Younus, who heads infectious diseases at University of Maryland Health System. He has taken to Twitter some time back, essentially to bust the mythology on coronavirus. And he's somebody who's been treating now COVID patients for a very long time, for almost 6 months, has loads of experience. And we are so grateful that with all this, he can still find a window for us. So Dr. Faheem Younus, thank you very much for finding the time. We are so grateful. And thank you for the service you are doing to humanity around the world, but also because of who you are and where you come from. You have a legion of followers in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, in the region.
Thank you, Gupta Sahab. Appreciate you having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
What do you want to know?
Tell us where you come from. Tell us how you started. Tell us, you are a celebrity now.
That word doesn't make me happy, but here is the deal. So I'm a very average common man, born and raised in Lahore, and went to med school in King Edward Medical College in Lahore. Around the age of 25, came to USA. So now at the age of 48, 49, it seems like I've lived two different lives. You know, one life in Lahore for about 24, 25 years and another 24, 25 years here in the US. And I came from my medical residency. You can never forget your motherland. So Pakistan is still my country. But this pandemic has, as doctors, we are always trained to think of humanity. And, to me, my patients are patients. They're human beings. They don't have a religion, creed, nationality. That's their personal matter. But I think this pandemic has allowed me to actually reach out, feel, touch that humanity globally. So I'm, in a way, grateful for the opportunity that this has given me for service. And I hope that it's over and one day we all can enjoy each other's company.
And when do you think will that day be?
It depends on us, Gupta Sahab. We are the superior dominant species, not the virus. It's almost like, when a child is crying, for something, the decision is with the parent, not with the 2-year-old child. This is a virus. This is nothing.
I think you don't know 2-year-olds anymore.
Well, there's a circle of life, so maybe you'll have grandchildren.
Right.
But the reality is that it depends on us how well we control this pandemic. As they say, all politics is local, all epidemiology is also local. If I showed you two graphs, one for New York City and one for USA, you wouldn't recognize that it's the same country, because New York City has completely crushed the curve. They're now at 1% because of how they are managing the virus.
1% of our factor.
1% of all positivity. So if you do 100 tests in New York City, one will come back positive. 99 will be negative, right? That's phenomenal. If you do the same thing for US, that number is still 5, 6, 7%.
Yes.
So the reality, what I'm telling you, and again, if you go to China or Taiwan or Vietnam, that number is even lower. So
Right.
It's to us how disciplined we are. Those who are disciplined will be able to crush it now. Those who are not disciplined will probably see it for another year, 2 years, 3 years.
And discipline essentially means what you keep talking about, which is
Yeah.
with the mask.
Right. So I am not a scaremonger. I don't agree with the constant shutdowns. I don't belong to that mindset. And I also don't belong to the mindset people who make fun of masks and social distancing and feel that this is a flu. The reality is, this is like driving. When you go out to drive, you just don't give the keys to a 15-year-old and say, just go on the highway. You read a book, you learn the rules of driving, you put a seat belt on, you make sure you are not sleep deprived, under the influence of drugs. And when you drive, what do? You keep safe distance between cars. You stay in your lane. It's the exact same rules here. Here is a pandemic, there is a risk outside. So when we go out, we wear a mask like a seat belt, and we stay away from crowds just like we keep distances between cars. So I think if we have that discipline and wash our hands repeatedly, chances are that we will be able to live our life and yet be safe.
So, Dr. Fahim, tell us, when did you first make a discovery of how serious this disease was? Also, when did you find your first patient of COVID?
Yeah, so I've been doing this for 20 years and I've gone through H1N1 pandemic. Believe it or not, that was a pandemic, and Ebola and Zika and SARS in 2003. And interestingly, I was in Pakistan in this January when this pandemic had technically already started. It hadn't hit the global level at that time. In February, I remember sitting with someone, and a good friend asked me, "What do you think about this coronavirus? This is nothing, right?" And I told him, I said, "No, I think this is very real. And it's coming. I'm actually surprised why there is not a lot of discussion about it in the media." And then on 8th of March is when I saw my first patient. And from there on, we've seen hundreds of patients by now, and it has literally taken us through the ringer.
Please describe that discovery, your first patient. Take us back to the day and the moment.
Sure. So it was a Sunday and I was home. I was off that weekend, but we were preparing for COVID for almost a month. We had started our preparation in the hospital since February. So we knew one day it's gonna hit us. But I didn't expect us, because we are a system of 13 hospitals and we are a little removed from major airports. So we always joked, our CEO actually, he was joking. He said, "Look, we are farther from international airport. The downtown hospitals will probably get hit first, and then we will see patients." On this Sunday afternoon around 11:30, 12:30, I get a call from the hospital saying, "We think we have our first COVID patient." It gave me goosebumps, because you never forget your first patients. I told my family, I said, "I got to go to work." I just changed, got to the hospital within 20, 30 minutes, and we had everyone from the top leadership, from the doctors, nurses. We started a command center. The next 3 hours were like a war zone, because there were charts on the walls, and we didn't know, that we had to see now how many of our team members got exposed to this patient. How do we treat this patient? What do we tell our hospital? We have 3,000 employees. What if media shows up on our doors within 30 minutes? What are we going to tell them? What will be the consequences of this patient? There were tons of questions. And that command center, Gupta Saab, is open till this day. I lead that command center with my other colleague. But now in 6 months, we have learned so much about this virus that sometimes we do not learn that much in 10 years about a disease. So humanity has come together, and we're very, very grateful to the basic science and the academic work that has gone into it.
So, just out of curiosity, how did that patient do? And was it a male patient, female patient? What kind of?
This was a lady in her 80s, and
Oh,
she had traveled to Turkey. And actually, she went home after 7, 8 days. She did well. She was more than 80 years old and survived.
so what is this mystique of this virus? You can be 80-year-old. In India, we have cases of 92, 93, 95-year-olds who come out waving to medical staff and everybody celebrates. And then you have people who are very young and who just get knocked over.
I think we need to think in terms of probabilities and not anecdotes. So
Right.
as physicians, there's always an 80-year-old who'll come to me and he said, Doc, I've smoked all my life and lung cancer didn't come near me. That does not mean smoking does not cause lung cancer. That just tells me you got lucky.
Yeah.
So the reality is, if you look at the composite of a population, still those who are elderly, those who are obese, who have high blood pressure, diabetes, they are still at a much higher risk. And those who are young, they are at a lower risk. That does not mean that no young person will die. Maybe it's one in a million, but if we start focusing on that one, we can make it look like anything.
Right.
So the probability is still higher for those age groups that I just mentioned, but everyone is equally susceptible to this virus. If 100 people went to a wedding and there was a highly infectious person there, chances are anyone who shakes hands with that person, whether you're 10 years old or 90 years old, chances are you're going to catch it.
Because Science, journal Science has a paper that says that one reason India is seeing such a heavy spread is that super spreaders are not in control. So, will you explain a little bit about what are super spreaders, how to handle them, and what makes them different?
Sure. So anything I say today is subject to change because this is such a dynamic topic and we're learning every day. So there are super spreader patients and then there are super spreader events. Current theory is that if I am infected and I have a very high viral load, then at a certain stage of my disease, usually a day before I develop symptoms to a day or two after when I'm most contagious. So if I take a flight at that time and I'm not wearing a mask and I'm coughing and sneezing around in that plane, chances are I'm going to spread it to a lot of people. Or if I go and attend a wedding at that time, or if I go in any indoor space, if I go there, I'm likely to infect a lot of people. Second is super spreader events. This again is if in a church or a mosque or a temple you're having 1,000 people for a religious ceremony, because they're huddled together for a long period of time, very emotional, sometimes singing, all those hugs and the camaraderie, that event can become a super spreader event. So any indoor event, whether that's a wedding, remember this virus has no faith, it has no politics. All it cares is, are you human beings and are you huddled together? Great, I'm in business.
And,
So
and,
that's how it thinks.
and the virus loves religion. No particular religion, but all religion, because religion means congregation, isn't it?
Absolutely. So virus just needs proximity. I think the virus's strategy is not to sit and wait on a doorknob or a surface or your car handle or your wallet. That's a very failed strategy for the virus. The virus's strategy is that you'll get closer to someone, you'll cough, sneeze, or you'll shake hands, and that's how it'll just start its cycle all over again.
Yeah. So my colleague Sandhya Ramesh, who's our science editor, uh, she has this question about fomites versus aerosols. And now I see new research has come out that says that it's almost impossible to pick live virus from surfaces. Unless it's very recent or unless somebody sneezed on the surface and somebody then touched it and rubbed it into his nose or her nose. So where are you on this fomites, which is from the surface, versus aerosol, which means hawa mein aa raha hai?
Sure. So first of all, we need to understand that this is a spectrum. This is not a light switch that's on or off. This is like a dimmer, that you can go a little high, you can dial up, you can dial down. So this is a spectrum. There is no right or wrong answer. There are 10 possible answers, number one. Number two, when it comes to surfaces, if you're working in a COVID unit or in a hospital where they have hundreds of COVID patients, yes, it's very likely that you can catch it from a surface. And that is why we wear PPE. That is why we have enhanced cleaning and disinfection in a hospital, because the chances are much higher. At the other extreme is if you're living at home without a COVID patient, your chance of catching it from a surface is nearly zero because there is no source. There's no one in your house. Where is the virus going to come from? So, and even if it comes from a mailman or a milkman or someone, the chances are it's just going to die in a few hours. I know people always quote that one study from New England Journal. They argue with me over Twitter. I never respond to arguments, by the way. But they feel that this virus somehow survives on surfaces for 2 days, 3 days. You need to remember that study was done in a laboratory, in an experiment. That's not natural environment. In reality life, net practice and a world class one day match, they're two different things,
Right.
right? So this is just like that. So I think it's important for people to remember the virus typically does not survive on surfaces too long. And therefore, if you don't have someone at your home with COVID, chances are you're not going to get it. Second thing about aerosol is the same thing. It's by and large droplet, which means that if you're closer to someone and you inhale those tiny micro particles that are suspended in the air, which are going to fall ultimately, then you will get the disease. And that is why a face mask is good enough. Under certain circumstances, it can go farther than 6 feet. It can go 8 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet. And we know that. And that is then called, is it aerosolized? The problem with that is, once again, that does not happen naturally. If I have the infection and I'm sitting in a closed restaurant in front of an air conditioner, of course, that air current is going to take that virus a little farther. Or if we are doing a bronchoscopy, we have an instrument down someone's lungs and we are aerosolizing and churning up the virus. Of course, it's going to get suspended in the air. But by and large, it is like a droplet, which means that your masks are going to be good enough.
Because aerosolized viruses are like measles.
That is correct. So measles is a very, very classical example of aerosol virus. And I always say that if measles flies like an eagle, coronavirus flies like a chicken. So it does fly, right? You can say मुर्गी उड़ती है, लेकिन वैसे तो नहीं उड़ती ना, जैसे कबूतर.
मुर्गी भी उड़ती है और मोर और मोरनी भी उड़ते हैं, लेकिन थोड़ा सा.
Exactly, thoda sa, right? So it's like that. And I don't say this so people become careless or complacent. I just say it so we don't end up on any extreme. Because if it was truly an aerosolized virus like measles, you'd have billions of patients by now.
Right. So, Dr. Fahim, take us back to Lahore and your medical college. And how did this transition from Lahore to Washington take place? How did the subcontinent lose you? I'm not saying how did Pakistan lose you. I'm saying how did the subcontinent lose you?
मुश्किल बात है. देखें, this is difficult. We immigrants, to me it's like an adopted mom. So when I came to US, it's difficult. When you have to leave your own mother and someone else adopts you at the age of 25, it's that kind of a feeling. Your mother is still your mother. I think this is complex, why I left. But all I can say is that's still my motherland. And America treated me really well. I'm very, very grateful to my adopted mother. I think it would be miserly on my part if I was not grateful. That doesn't make America perfect, by the way. Right. I don't live in a paradigm of good, bad. By now you know that I live in gray. I am not a very black and white person. I think those extremes are overrated. But yes, been very grateful. And here's the fun part. So let me tell you a good story here. So when I landed, and I think this is true for many of us in subcontinent, we just don't like to accept it, which is that we live in more homogenous population. We all look alike. We eat the same food. We don't have that much diversity. We may claim it, but a little bit. So when I landed in New York, I had a lot of biases in my mind, Gupta Saab, and I'm going to say some sensitive things here. So I hope people can just play along and look at it in a good way. I really thought that every Indian was my enemy.
Right.
That every black man was a thug or a thief. Whites were racist. Jews just love money. So you have these stereotypes in your mind. You may not want to accept it. Here is the best thing. One of my best friends in residency was Anil Srivastava, the guy from Delhi. I hope he listens to it one day, and many others. So that barrier just got broken. We got very good friends. The program director who went out of his way to give me an out-of-match position was a Jewish guy. All the white doctors and nurses around me were really, really kind to me. And when I went to our mosque, I met the most pious African-American Muslims. So I think this is what the beauty of America is. It has literally shattered those stereotypes for me and helped me understand the common humanity. We're all humans before we are anything else. And so I'm very grateful for that.
And I presume you figured a Punjabi is a Punjabi is a Punjabi. No matter what the nationality, what the religion.
No, that is true. But I think you feel like you're practicing your faith in the true sense when you
Right.
see common humanity, because we're not here to force our will on anyone. We're here to, love, respect, live together.
So did people in Pakistan also, your friends, your teachers say, "Bhai kya kar rahe ho? Faheem Younus, tum brain drain kara rahe ho. Zarurat to yahan par hai."
Oh, yes, that is true. So, one of my role model teachers, Dr. Faisal Masood, may Allah bless his sweet soul, he passed away prematurely, in my opinion. Uh, when he used to hear us take our USMLE exams and leave, I still remember Faisal Saab used to typically talk in English or Punjabi. He rarely talked Urdu, at least I don't remember much. So, when he heard, he said, Puttar ji, batti othe balo jithe hanera hove. ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਇੰਨੀਆਂ ਬੱਤੀਆਂ ਬਲਦੀਆਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਬੱਤੀ ਬਾਲਣ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਫਾਇਦਾ? Essentially saying, oh son, go light a lamp where there is some darkness, where there are already millions of lamps. What's the point of lighting another lamp there? Essentially, he was saying, why do you want to go to America where they have so many doctors? And that stuck with me for a while. And when you're here, it's very difficult to figure out ways to give back. I can't just go back to Pakistan for 3 months every year and work there. So this pandemic, in a very strange way, reminded me of what Faisal Saab said. And as I got to talk and educate people about it, I really felt that it was just God's grace that He gave me the ability to light a lamp in Peru, in Paraguay, in Mexico, in India, in Pakistan. People sometimes respond to me, they say, I live in a village, I have nothing here. So I'm just following your tweets and this is keeping me safe. So, I think I'm very, very grateful that there is an opportunity and, we are trying to contribute whatever we can.
You talked about your professor speaking in Punjabi or English and not in Urdu. I just can't resist the temptation of telling you my favorite Manto story about Urdu and Lahore. When Manto went to Pakistan, he said, जब पंजाबी जब उर्दू बोलता है तो लगता है कि झूठ बोल रहा है.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome.
तो आप ये बताइए कि you went from darkness to light, and then you got this opportunity to take this light back to where there was darkness to at least lighten it. And the instrument for doing that was social media. So how did the transformation come about?
Sure. First of all, I must acknowledge the light that exists in those countries. I think they're very brave souls. The doctors, nurses in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, these countries, I have huge admiration for them. They're literally making huge sacrifices. So I have respect and admiration for them. But social media, I came home after that March 8th. I was getting so many calls from all over the world. My friend, my faith community, my family, and people had questions, what if, what if, what if, what if? And I was pulling 14-hour days at work. There was no way I was going to be able to get back to them in a timely fashion. And usually people who know me, they know that I'm responsive. I would get back to you in a timely fashion. So I was actually talking to my family one day, really sharing my guilt. Look, I feel horrible because all of these family members must be thinking, oh, what a jerk, I need him now and he's not responding to me. So my daughter casually said, Baba, you are on Twitter, so why don't you tweet some of the common questions and let them know so they can find information there. So it'll be a little efficient for you. So as I'm sitting in my living room, it was around 8:30, 9, whatever time at night. So I said, all right, I know that these 10 questions are popping up all the time. Let me answer them. I put those 10 questions on Twitter, and then I just go with my life. And I think late that night or next morning, I look at it and they have gotten 10,000 retweets. And I'm quite surprised. And then another few hours later, 20,000, 40,000, they got like 100,000 retweets. And those tweets were seen by like 20 million people. And that allowed me to then realize that, look, there's an opportunity here. A lot of people are hurting, not just my family member. A lot of people all over the world are confused. And as physicians, you're trained for that thing. When you see a mass of patients, You can't just say, I'm tired, I'm going to go home. You try to take care of that. So I think that's what I've been doing.
So you talked about aerosolizing patients, working on patients' lungs, and that drives the virus out. How scared are you? Are you scared at all?
So this is God's grace. I don't think I've been scared throughout this thing, and there is none of my credit. I believe truly that if it's my time to go, I can slip on the pavement, hit my head, and that's what happens every day. I mean, people were dying before coronavirus. People will die after it. That does not mean that we become silly and make stupid mistakes. So I wear my PPE, I wear my gear, and then I put my trust in God's hand. I do my part. But after that, my mind is free. And I think typically, whenever possible, I try to remind myself, look, this could be the last day. So just live one day at a time. So I think this pandemic, maybe part of this is just the professionalism. It's my profession. I do it every day. But honestly, and I'm not trying to, pretend something, this has just not scared me at all. I think I'm concerned about people. I'm concerned about how much damage it can do to societies, and it's already doing. I'm concerned about the politicizing of the virus. I'm concerned about the division that it has created. But other than that, if we were united, I think we could crush this very easily.
So I'm taking questions from our readers, viewers, friends, guests. There is Mr. BBN Rao, who works in a key position with GMR Group. GMR Group owns the big airports, Delhi, Hyderabad, and is building more. So he says, is herd immunity the only feasible way to fight the current pandemic in a country like India? Considering the current vaccine development efforts and economic situation of a country like India, how far is that?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think it'll be different for different countries because I know India is your Pune Institute is working on a massive vaccine. So, but you also have a massive scale. The question is going to be which vaccine is most effective, which vaccine is safest, which vaccine requires refrigeration, and which vaccine can just be transported more easily, which vaccine, there are just so many variables. Is it going to be one dose versus two doses? And which vaccine gets approval at what time? And I know I'll come to the answer, but this is not just a simple, once again, it's not a light switch. So what will happen is currently the understanding is that the vaccine may start getting approval by the end of this year to early next year. Then will come your first responders or your high risk populations. By the time it gets to Shekhar Gupta Saab, it may be another year, it may be another 8 months, it may be another 18 months. And by the time you vaccinate the whole world, technically at that 70%, that may be 3 years. So I think these are large timelines, and it's important, and I don't say this to scare people. I think it is important for us to know how far it is, right? So that will enhance the value of those three things: mask, wash your hands, and avoid crowds. Because if you did all three of them consistently, they're probably just as good as a vaccine. That's cheap, that's available to everyone today. So if you kept on doing those three things, this vaccine is not going to be more than 75% effective. Chances are, nobody knows, but my gestalt is it's going to be 50 to 75% effective. And these three strategies are probably just as effective. So I don't want people to feel like, oh my God, if the vaccine is a year away, I've got nothing. No, we have a life jacket that can keep us afloat till that time.
And this 3-point strategy has no side effects, no after effects.
It's cheap, it's available to everyone, it's up here. So if you believe in it, then you can be safe. And yeah, people don't have to believe. If the world doesn't believe in it, if you continue to practice this, your family will be safer. So just do the right thing for yourself and your family.
Yeah. So Dr. Fahim, I have Professor Afrozul Haq of Jamia Hamdard in Delhi, who wants to know a further question on the vaccine, that how long do you think will this immunity or the antibodies that the vaccine gives us last?
Again, great question. We don't know that answer. What we do know is it typically will last much longer than a natural infection. Now the question is how much longer natural infection lasts? We don't know that either. Studies are showing that the antibodies trail off by 3 to 4 months, but that's a misleading information. People feel that means in 4 months immunity goes away. That's wrong, because you have T cell immunity, B cell immunity. Human body is pretty smart. You can't make it a fool twice easily. So what happens is previous coronaviruses, previous seasonal viruses typically give you a 1 to 2 year immunity. And if this virus is also naturally going to give us 1 to 2 year immunity, that will be awesome. And if vaccine gives us, let's say, 2 year immunity, I personally believe that is enough to crush this virus and this pandemic. Once again, remember, the goal is not to eliminate this virus completely. The goal is to make it irrelevant. H1N1 that came out in 2009 and 10 is still around. Believe it or not, I still see patients who occasionally get H1N1, but it's not in the news. It's irrelevant. So once we hit it to the point where coronaviruses just become 0.5%, it'll become irrelevant and life will move on.
So, Dr. Fahim, there is so much conversation right now about vaccines. Now, H1N1, one reason it got crushed also was a treatment was found. There's a drug which works. So why are we not so focused on finding an antiviral for COVID? And why are we not making such progress there as we might have done, say, with H1N1? These viruses are cousins.
Gee, Gupta Sahab, I probably look at it differently. I think there's an immense amount of progress made on treatments, and I'll tell you how. On 8th of March, when we saw that first patient, now looking back, we treated her completely wrong. We did not know how to treat her. Back then, we thought that everybody should get on a ventilator quickly so they can survive and not spread the virus. Now, after Italy and New York and Spain and what happened there in Seattle, we know a few things very, very clearly. We use anticoagulations because we know that this virus causes blood clots, so we use blood thinners. We use dexamethasone because the registry trial from UK shows that if you use that on patients who need oxygen, that their survival increases.
That's very cheap.
It's very cheap and available. And then remdesivir is a drug that we use intravenously, which also shortens the illness. There are other drugs like immunoglobulin synthetically made that also help. Plasma, whether it helps or not, there are some conflicting reports on it. The data keeps changing, but we're still learning about it. I personally believe it will work. We just don't know the right patient, the right time, the right amount of antibodies. So we're sort of using it in a crude way. So we have so many modalities now, and it's not just a list of things. If you look at the outcomes, the ICU mortality for COVID has gone down by 30 to 40%. To give you perspective, sepsis is a condition which is a blood infection. And over the past 30, 40 years, sepsis mortality has not gone down by 30%. Over 30 years, with all the fancy schmancy MRIs, CAT scans, antibiotic. Here, COVID, within 6 months, the mortality has gone down by 30 to 40%. So I think we're making immense progress. And this is how it's going to happen. It's a game of inches. There's no one solution here. You know, those days are gone when one batsman would just make you win the game. These days, it's about you drop one catch, you lose the game, right? It's about a game of inches. Things have tightened up. Competitions are now heated. You have to bowl well, you have to field well, you have to bat well, and then you have to perform well under a high pressure situation. You have to be physically fit. All of those things together make a great team. So similarly for a pandemic, some of this is going to be our own prevention. Some of this is going to be treatment. Some of this is going to be vaccine, and some of this is going to be economic relief and policies from government. When all of that comes together, then you get countries like Taiwan and South Korea.
So has the percentage of people needing hospitalization or going to ICU also come down as our knowledge has improved?
Absolutely, no question about it. In our own hospital, if you look at the graph, it's very telling.
So tell us a few examples from your experience on this kind of patient you would have.
Sure. So I still remember this lady who came from a prison, actually. She was in her 40s. and she was on a ventilator. Her lungs were completely shot. And every weekend when I would come home, I thought in back of my mind, I don't know if she'll be alive on Monday when I go back. And every week she hung in there. She stayed with us for 52 days, almost 2 months, right? Out of those 52 days, probably 40 days on a ventilator. And one day on a weekend, I receive a text from one of the nurses with a picture of someone sitting in the sun. And she says, Dr. Younus, do you recognize this person? And I said, I honestly don't. And then she put the name underneath. This is secure texting that we can do as physicians. So she said, this is that patient. I brought her outside today so she could sit in the sun. I could not believe she walked home after 52 days in the hospital. So we've seen a lot of miracles. And by the way, I want to make sure that that patient, I don't think survived because of our treatment. She, once again, there were 100 things that went right. And the kudos to our nurses. They just did an amazing job taking care of her. So there are so many stories like this of patients that we thought were very unlikely to survive, but they did.
I have a question from my colleague Sajid Ali Mir, who's been coordinating with you and setting this up. So Sajid wants to know what is more dangerous, a pandemic or people in power believing in conspiracy theories? People who are actually in powerful positions like your president. Now that you are in Washington, I'll say your president.
Sure. Sure. They can, in general, I think ignorance is always more dangerous than a pandemic. A pandemic will come and go. Ignorance will here to stay. So in general, conspiracy theory or arrogance or ignorance, I try not to point out people, not because I'm scared of them, just because it's just my style. I like not to go after any single person, because I also believe that every saint has a past and every Satan, has a future. People can change. So I'm optimistic when it comes to that.
Are you a religious person?
I think I'm a man of faith. I think faith is very important in my life, but that's my personal matter. I try not to impose it on others. I respect other people's faith. But yes, for me, I think my faith is a very important pillar in my life.
And you come from a very small community.
Well, we don't think it's small, because by the grace of God, it's established in over 200 countries of the world, and we are united at the hand of a leader who's our role model. Absolutely. But we believe that we are practicing true Islam in the world as Ahmadi Muslims, and we believe in love for all, hatred for none. And yes, we do get some hate, we do get some discrimination, but we also believe that's a matter of ignorance. People don't know our message. Once again, a lot of myth busting needs to happen there, Gupta Saab. So there are a lot of myths around a sect. And if you don't hear from me directly, of course, you're likely to just continue to believe in those myths. So there will be a time when that myth busting happens. And once people understand what the message is all about, I think the hatred will go away.
Well, that's true. In fact, I have many friends in Pakistan who are very proud of your community, because I think one of your most eminent generals, your first Nobel Prize winner scientist, etc., have come from your tiny community. But having said that, people like Donald Trump, I mean, from day one, he's been standing in front of cameras and reading out names of prescription drugs in a country like America, where it's an outrage. It's not India or Pakistan where you can go to a chemist and buy anything.
Yeah, I think this is the issue, that research always shows that politicians try to calm people by giving them good information, which they feel is good. The reality is we all need to have deference to expertise. I cannot just run a journalistic show like Gupta Saab you're doing. I'll be a mess if I was trying to do your job. It may look very easy. What are you doing here? Just asking a few questions, right? To an average person, that may look very easy, but you know that you're a Tendulkar of your profession, right?
Oh,
and I
wow.
keep cricket or whatever, right? But yeah, I keep going to cricket. But yes, there was a time I was deeply in love with cricket. Then I divorced it.
That's a delight chatting with somebody from our region, because your cricketing metaphor can be so easily used.
Agreed. So that is why. But I think that in general, yeah, there should be deference to expertise. As a physician, I should talk about infectious diseases. I should not get into politics. A politician shouldn't get into economics. An economics person shouldn't get into defense. And unfortunately, that's what happens when there is a pandemic. All of a sudden, everybody's become an expert on it. And I'm like, look, guys, I understand you're well intentioned, but please swim in your own lane because otherwise we'll create a lot of confusion.
Yeah, because now everybody is a epidemiologist, virologist, clinician, Ayurvedist,
Yes.
Unani expert, everything. All
Yeah.
these nuskhas that you hear about, or this stuff, oceans in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc., have this elaichi or that sauce. How do you respond to these?
Yeah, so again, I think there are multiple levels there. One, I believe people are well intentioned. Two, I think if people want to do something in their own personal life, that's their right. But if something is not scientifically proven, they shouldn't promote it. You can do it on your own, but don't promote it as a cure. And the reason behind that is twofold. One, there are thousands of people actually who've had side effects who've died. Studies have shown this. So there is a real harm. And two, when you add something into science, you actually corrupt it. Sometimes people say, तुम्हें क्या problem है? मैं कर रहा हूँ, इससे क्या नुकसान होगा? देखिए, if you just add more English words to Shakespeare, तो Shakespeare का क्या नुकसान होगा? If you added more mathematical equation to Einstein's theory of relativity, तो आपके ख्याल में theory of relativity वैसे की वैसे रहेगी? No, you'll destroy it. So science is similarly like that. It needs to be airtight with facts. Don't add other things into it. Our 2 cents can mess it up. तो अपनी जिंदगी में करना करते रहें.
Avantika, who's our health editor, who wants to know that, do you have a view on why fatalities in South Asia, that is our region, and Southeast Asia in general, that's also Indonesia, Philippines, etc., are much lower than the rest of the world, particularly Europe?
Sure. So once again, another difficult question that requires a gray answer. There are many, many possibilities. Some of them very optimistic. Some of them are not so optimistic. And I don't know the right answer. I think we will find out in the hindsight, 5-10 saal ke baad. But here is what I think today. So on the optimistic end, it's possible that the genetic determinants of people living in that part of the world provide them some strength against this virus. It's possible that previous viral infections that happen every year, maybe there's other strains of coronavirus that are circulating and you have some cross immunity. They have some exposure to the cousins of this virus. Some people believe BCG, malaria, dengue, there are all kinds of possibilities out there. So that's the optimistic side of it. The not so optimistic side is we're not testing enough. So unless you test millions of people, you really don't know, because some old people may be dying in a hospital of heart attack, which is labeled as coronary artery disease while they had coronavirus. Someone may be dying of what they're thinking pneumonia, but they had a blood clot in lung, which is coronavirus. Today in our hospitals, we test everybody who comes to a hospital. And we find 3, 4, 5 patients every day that are asymptomatic. We find ladies who came to deliver a baby, but they're COVID positive. They have no symptom. We find people who came for a broken leg, but they're COVID positive. Then people say, and I know this, they'll say, well, our hospitals are not overloaded. Shamshan Ghat mein koi rush nahi hai, Kabristan mein koi rush nahi hai, so this must be good. You can't think that way. Wisconsin, the state in America right now where the test positivity is one of the highest, over 20%. If you go to Wisconsin's hospitals, they're not overloaded. I will challenge people, go look, Google it today, go on YouTube and find me a loaded hospital in America. We have 1,000 people dying in America every day. We have 35,000 hospitalizations, but you don't see hospitals overloaded. So that's a lagging indicator. That's a very dangerous indicator. Because in India, let's just say if 500 more people started dying all over India in car accidents, you think you'll find out? No, because in your city it'll be one, in the next town it'll be one, in the next street it'll be one, and you won't be able to put it together. So I think those are the two angles of it. One, it could actually be low because of the reasons I mentioned. Two, it may actually be very high. We're just not measuring it.
So, and do you have a view on the Pakistan model? Is there a Pakistan model? Because if you believe the figures, then Pakistan has done quite well. It looks like the virus was rising like this. Test positivity rate was 20% and suddenly it dropped.
Same exact answer for Pakistan. I don't think there's any different answer because it's hard for me to come up with something else. And I know some people, again, they take it. So here's the problem I have with with many people these days. If you say something optimistic, they always want to link credit to someone. And I think that's where politicizing comes in. This is not my business to say which prime minister performed well. I don't even live there. I don't know the day-to-day realities. I can just give you a scientific analysis. What is likely, what is not likely. So, and I know a lot of people will like to say, well, why didn't you say that our country did a very good job? Well, same people are telling me that nobody was observing SOPs. The same people on the ground says nobody was wearing a mask. It's very hard to ascribe success when you don't even have rigorous practice behind it to follow. So what I say is, if your test positivity is low, if disease is under control, be humble, be grateful to God, and just drive slowly. I call it a data fog. When you have fog on the road, what do? You slow down, right? Because
Right,
you will hang your car somewhere.
right.
So when you don't have enough data, there is no point being arrogant. It's a good thing. Thank God we are not having more fatalities. All my request is drive slow so you can get out of this fog. Whether that's a 1 year or 2 year long drive, I don't know. But the moment you speed up and you think that, oh my God, we won, you don't know. You may end up with a second wave.
Because this virus is more arrogant than all the rest of us together. And the virus punishes you for arrogance,
Yeah.
isn't it?
The virus does not like arrogance. That one thing is very clear.
I mean, we've seen senior politicians, ministers, etc., say, nothing will happen, or have this Ayurvedic stuff, or have this stuff, and they get hit there.
Yeah.
We have a member of parliament who said, take a mud bath every day and nothing happens, and he got caught. He was tested positive. So, and he said, blow a conch shell. So,
And that's my point. Sir, you want to take a mud bath and blow whatever? Please keep doing it. Don't promote it.
right.
Just do it in your privacy of your own house. But when you promote it, you put other people's lives at risk.
Himani Chandra, she covers the pharma sector and health for us, domain specialist. She has two questions. One, there's AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine candidate, second trial volunteer has had a setback, a neurological issue. Does it mean a setback to the vaccine? Because that is the vaccine which is also progressing in India at this Pune-based Serum Institute of India, the largest manufacturer of vaccines in the world. In fact, India has the two largest, this and Bharat Biotech. And the second question is linked. She wants to know which one do you think is the most promising candidate yet?
Don't know both answers. First, it's premature for me to say because we have not seen the full phase 3 data. Remember, phase 3 trials are done on 20 to 30,000 people. If in 30,000 you have 2 neurological events, I think that's fine. That's not to minimize suffering. That's to say at scale, compared to what this disease will do, the risk benefit favors this vaccine and the vaccine will be approved. If you have 50 more such cases, that's a different story. So we need to wait till all the data for those 20 or 30,000 patients or volunteers come out. As far as which vaccine will be best, once again, we don't know because there are 3 different ways to make the vaccine. And these vaccines are made by all those different strategies. At the end of the day, which one will be best? We need to use the vaccine, see the results on hundreds of thousands of patients, and then we will know. So it's premature for me to say which
But
one will.
you don't worry that this is being pushed too fast?
I think so. I do worry, but at the same time, I think there are adequate checks and balances, and media is playing a good role there. So people are all understanding that, look, we don't want politics to just kill us. So at least in US where I live, there's significant progress being made to put the right guardrails in place. So this vaccine is not pushed, and FDA has reassured over and over again that they're not likely to just give approval under any political pressure. We will see how it goes, but I think there is too much to lose if we push it through.
So Professor Trump is not going to be able to give a peremptory clearance to this before election.
I don't think so. I think it'll be very hard. I was just reading earlier today, Moderna, one of the leading vaccines in US, they're actually saying that no, it will not even get FDA approval this year. So it may have some emergency use approval, but not proper FDA approval. So we'll wait and see. I think it's very difficult for a meaningful vaccine launch before the election.
Because Moderna has another issue because that's a very innovative approach to a vaccine that hasn't been done before.
That is correct.
The messenger RNA approach.
Mhm.
Yeah. But you have a president who has arm twisted every institution. Now that's happening in many countries right now. But America, when it comes to science and medicine, is so crucial. You think the system being able to stand up to him?
It's very difficult. Again, I'm not a politician and I have all my days are consumed in this work. So honestly, I don't even, and I'm not trying to dodge a question here.
No, not at all.
See, I'm not watching news. I have no idea. Yesterday, I know there was a presidential debate. It was depressing. But beyond that, I don't even know what's going on and what's the reality. So the fact of the matter is, any divided country is not going to be able to win against a united virus. That's the fact. So unfortunately, we are not united right now in the US and we're paying the price.
And funnily, we have so much diversity of all kinds, ethnicity, religion, opinion, politics. The virus has no diversity.
Yeah.
The wretched fellow is the way it is. So
Exactly.
So it's a betting man's question. Manoj Gudsahani, who works for AC on healthcare technologies, who says, if you were to bet, when do you think is it most likely that we have the first viable vaccine? 6 months, 3 months, 1 year?
When you are saying?
When we will have the first viable vaccine?
So this is important. I think being first is not important here. This is not trying to putting a man on the moon. There's a difference here. Being accurate is important. So number one, because if you go by first, I think Russia is already vaccinating. China has started vaccinating their military people. So technically they are first. The reality here is the vaccine that's safe and that's effective ultimately is going to win. And if I were to tell, and I think the vaccine companies and producers are very smart people, they understand that fact. Because you don't want to be first in everything. This is exactly one of those things.
Well,
so
we had our own system lose it a little bit when our ICMR Director General wrote to the lab, etc., saying we must have a vaccine on our Independence Day, which was last 15th of August. But at the same time, look at Putin. He boasted that he's given it to his daughter, and the Russian government says that half their cabinet has taken it, including their defense minister. So a vaccine like that, would you administer it to your daughter?
Exactly. See, now that's how politicians think. But where is the science in all of that? There is really no science. So this is why we have to be cool-headed and just analyze something. And that can happen in US tomorrow. My answer will be the exact same. Just because we've given a vaccine to 1 million people, let's say, is that scientific? No, the science is something very different. So this is exactly a political approach to something, just to try and convince people if 5 celebrities are using Lifebuoy must be good. No, that's marketing. That's not science.
Right, right. And you can't do marketing with vaccines and infectious diseases.
Yeah.
Because once again, the bug is not impressed.
That's right.
So before I let you go, I know for my gratitude that you've still been able to squeeze out time, and I know in Washington it's well past midnight now. I'm a late night person, but I'm not an early morning person. You are an early morning person as well. So I know that I have to let you go, but before you go, give a message to all your millions of fans in India and Pakistan in English, Urdu, and Punjabi, most important. Because intellectually Punjabis are of the most exalted categories.
Oh, I'm thinking of what you said about Manto. So, no, I think the message really is that every crisis has an opportunity. We really need to think harder. What is the opportunity in this crisis? We didn't ask for this crisis, but now that it has been thrusted upon us, what fundamental change we have created in our own life? Am I becoming a better husband, a better father? Has this, because there is an acute or a acuter awareness of death, right? That's what's causing anxiety, because people feel death is a little closer now, which is a fallacy. Death was always closer to us. So just because we are going to Zoom or WebEx, to me, is not learning a lesson. That's an adaptation. But we must learn a profound lesson in this pandemic. Are we becoming more materialistic or less materialistic? Are we really caring for the person, the bai, the lady who comes and cleans our bathrooms? Are we really on a human level, or have we become better? Because if we have not, honestly, then it's a lose-lose proposition. फिर वायरस से भी मार खाई और इखलाक से भी मार खाई. So in Urdu, I think I would just say कि इस पैंडेमिक के कोई सबक हमने सीखा है. क्योंकि अगर तो हमने सिर्फ जूम और वेबएक्स पे चले जाने को एक सबक समझ लिया, तो वो तो एक एडजस्टमेंट की है हमने ज़िंदगी में. लेकिन हमारे आसपास जो गरीब लोग हैं, क्या हम उनके लिए ज़्यादा हमदर्द हो गए हैं? क्या हम एक अच्छा हस्बैंड, एक अच्छी बीवी, एक अच्छा बाप बन गए हैं? क्योंकि थोड़ा सा मौत करीब आई है ना, मौत के डर से इंसान में कुछ चेंज आती है. सो माई रिक्वेस्ट इज़, एंड आई एम एक्चुअली टेलिंग यू बट टॉकिंग टू माई सेल्फ, आई लुक एट इट ऑलवेज लाइक दैट कि कोई इसमें अपॉर्चुनिटी होनी चाहिए. क्योंकि जो स्मार्ट आदमी है वो तो हर वक्त बिजनेस करना चाह रहा होता है. यू नो, पीपल ऑफ फेथ डू बिजनेस विद गॉड, बट देयर इज ऑलवेज सम ट्रांजैक्शन गोइंग ऑन. उस ट्रांजैक्शन को हमें सोचना चाहिए, और मेरा ख्याल है कि उससे हमें बहुत फ़ायदा होगा. क्योंकि द रियलिटी इज़ गुड 60, 70, 80% of the people, that's my belief scientifically, that they will avoid coronavirus.
Right.
A lot of people are not going to get it.
Right.
So they will get to live and look back and really reflect. You don't want to, 20 साल के बाद मुड़ के देखा तो मैंने क्या खोया, क्या पाया. मतलब this is the time to do something fundamentally good. So you have a story to tell your children, your grandchildren.
और एक पंजाबी में, क्योंकि जो हमारे दोस्त हैं चीफ मिनिस्टर हमारे पंजाब के कैप्टन अमरिंदर सिंह, उनका एक दिन मुझे फोन आया तो उन्होंने मुझे कहा मैं की करा लोग समझते नहीं है, चाटा खाई जाते हैं जाके. तो पीपल आर इन क्राउड्स.
देखो जे घर बह के चाट खा लें तो कोई बुराई नहीं होदे विच, और मास्क पा के तो चाट खाई नहीं जा सकेगी, मास्क तो लाना पएगा. ਸੋ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਇਹੋ ਹੀ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਣਾ ਕਿ ਦੇਖੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਕੁਝ ਸਿੱਖ ਲਈਏ ਇਸ ਪੈਂਡੈਮਿਕ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ. ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਕਲਮੰਦ ਆਦਮੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ, ਉਹ ਜਦੋਂ ਕੰਮ ਖਰਾਬ ਵੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੋਵੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕੋਈ ਸਬਕ ਲੈ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚੋਂ. ਤੇ ਇਸ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਇਹ ਮੰਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਰੱਬ ਕੋਲੋਂ, ਇਹ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਤੇ ਆ ਗਿਆ ਨਾ, ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਆ ਹੀ ਗਿਆ, ਇੱਕ ਤੂਫਾਨ ਆ ਹੀ ਗਿਆ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਕੋਲੋਂ ਕੁਝ ਸਿੱਖ ਲਈਏ ਤੇ ਕੁਝ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋ ਜਾਏਗਾ, ਔਰ ਉਹ ਗੁਜ਼ਰ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਜਲਦੀ ਜਾਏਗਾ ਜੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਮਾਈਂਡ ਪੋਜ਼ਿਟਿਵ ਹੋ ਜਾਏ. ਤੇ ਸਿੱਖਣ ਵਾਲੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਤੇ ਉਹੋ ਹੀ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ, ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਮੁਹੱਬਤਾਂ ਨਫ਼ਰਤਾਂ ਖ਼ਤਮ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਕਿ ਵਾਇਰਸ ਨੇ ਕੋਈ ਤਫਰੀਕ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ ਹੈ. ਵਾਇਰਸ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਖਣਾ, ਵਾਇਰਸ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਇਹੋ ਸਵਾਲ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਬਈ ਤੂੰ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਕੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਬਣ ਗਏ ਹਾਂ, ਅਸੀਂ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਬਣ ਗਏ, ਔਰ ਜੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣੇ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਅਜੇ 6 ਮਹੀਨੇ ਸਾਲ 2 ਸਾਲ ਪਿਆ. ਮੈਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਇਹ ਵਾਇਰਸ ਕਿਧਰੇ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ. ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਦਾ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਕਿ ਤੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਇੰਪਰੂਵ ਕਰ ਲੈ, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਇਨਸ਼ਾਅੱਲਾ ਤਾਲਾ, ਔਰ ਮੇਰਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਹੈ 60, 70, 80% ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵਾਇਰਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ, ਉਹ ਬਚ ਜਾਣਗੇ. ਖੁਦਾ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਫਜ਼ਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਲੋਕ ਬਚ ਜਾਣਗੇ. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਵੀ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਸਪੈਨਿਸ਼ ਫਲੂ ਵੀ 66% ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ 'ਚ, ਰਾਈਟ. ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਿਲ ਕੇ ਰਹੀਏ ਤੇ 10-20 ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਦੱਸਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਦੇਖੋ ਉਹ ਵਕਤ ਸੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਫਲਾਣੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਫ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਵਕਤ ਸੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਫਲਾਣੇ ਗਰੀਬ ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ. ਤੇ ਇਹ ਮੌਕਾ ਹੈ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਵਿੱਚ। ਬਾਕੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਇਖਤਿਆਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ। ਵੈਕਸੀਨ ਕਦੋਂ ਆਣੀ ਕਦੋਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਣੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਪੀਡ ਅਪ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਮੈਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ।
Well, we leave that to Putin and Trump.
ਉਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਤੇ ਫੋਕਸ ਕਰੀਏ ਜੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ।
See, we say in Hindi also, there is an old line of poetry that all our teachers and parents have quoted to us, which is "Bina bulaya sankat aaya, fir usse muh mode kyun." Okay, this is an uninvited calamity, but now it's come. Why should
That's
we
right.
run away?
Beautiful.
So, thank you very much. I know that you have the gift of patience and the joy on your face, because there are doctors and doctors, but there are very few doctors who are also healers. So you are one of them, and I think your patients are fortunate. So thank you very much, and thank you very much. We're going to talk some cricket. So if I may sum up our conversation in cricketing terms, this is not a T20 match that will be over in finite time. Right?
Excellent point.
You are in it for the long term. So as we say, Test cricket plays session by session, over by over.
Good point. I may use that, Gupta Sahab.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fahim. It's been such a privilege talking with you. And once again, thank you very much for sitting up at midnight. I know 6 o'clock in the morning, you'll be out to work looking after those patients.
Take care. My salam and my regards to all your viewers.
And my best wishes to your family.
Thank you, sir.